on Up and Up and Away, Technology to the Rescue. I repeat, it's Up, Up and Away, Technology to the Rescue. And with that, I would like to introduce you all to the moderator of this session, starting with Mr. Asim Parashar, Partner Financial Services, PwC India, Mr. Abhaya Prasad Hota, Consultant, Swift India Domestic Services, Mr. Shafique Dawood, Head Sales and Business Development, APAC Group IB, Mr. ShivKumar Bhasin, Chief Technology and Operations Officer, NSE, Mr. Subhojit Roy, Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer, SBI Mutual Fund, Dr. Suresh A. Shanmugam, Head MMFSS, Innovation and Future Technology, Mahindra and Mahindra Finance. I would now request Mr. Asim Parashar to please begin the session.
Thanks, Ankita. Thanks for setting the context and the introduction to the panelists. Welcoming all the panelists and also the audience for this particular session. We have been seeing explosion of payments, digital payments in the last few years, and the last 9 months have been kind of further exponentially increasing the payment, digital payments footprint. Now, when we look at all these aspects of it, there are certain things which are coming to the mind of all the customers as well as all the payment service provider. So without doing much ado, let me start with few interesting topics in that. So the first question which I want to put to the panel is, volume of digital payment transactions is increasing exponentially, but with the increase, there are genuine concerns coming on fraud, cyber threats in various forms, both at the customer side as well as on the payment service provider side. So what has been your experience and learnings as an industry practitioner? And I would like to start with Mr. AP Hota, who has been at the forefront of this transformation in the country. So over to you, Mr. Hota.
Sir, you are on mute.
Yes, very good morning to everyone. I hope I am audible.
Yes, sir. Morning.
Well, yes, India is now, there is no doubt that India is now leading the globe so far as digital retail payments is concerned. Possibly it is very much, everybody knows, last month in UPI, 2 billion transactions were processed, and in a period of just 4 years. IMPS, which is another instant payment, completed 10 years. There is a wide range of products, and the products which are in the offing, with the contactless payments, I suppose the transit payment, which I think is the final frontiers where we have to do a lot of work, that is also coming. Well, the concerns that everybody says that security is a concern. Yes, security would continue to be the concern, even after 2 or 3 years. The fraudsters are always one step ahead. So the concerns would remain. And if we are thinking that we will fully address the concern, possibly that is not the correct assumptions. What we need to do is, despite these concerns, which is being addressed by a set of people, NPCI is doing, Dilip and his team is consistently working on this. All the individual operators are busy, banks are busy, because it is bread and butter for them. They will really do the job. So security concerns would remain, they would be on the job, it would be always a continuous battle. But despite that, what needs to be done is how to build the confidence in the digital thing. Because despite such a large volume, we know that the active users base is hardly about 150 to 200 million, maybe a few million plus and minus. But the number has to go up to really 700 million. For that to go, possibly one thing that is required is a lot of unnecessary fears and imaginative fears are there. People are sitting on the fence. They are not doing the transactions. How can we really address that? Not so genuine fear. Genuine fear, there are really ways to tackle it. But sometimes really I feel we are exaggerating the security concerns and really creating fear. That can be addressed by very robust management, really dispute management, grievance redressal, and also awareness campaign. The immediately after the COVID, the kind of awareness campaign that got built, even governor was coming on the television almost 50 times a day. So the similar kind of really, if not really, I'm taking 50 times a day, at least this campaign has to really continue. So the way RBI kya kahta hai, these days, a lot of campaigns are going on. The same way the industry should really do to build the confidence and digital payment. So concern is really that the unnecessary fears about the transactions have not been addressed. And possibly a few more ideas that I have. Let me not really take a lot of time at this right at the beginning. Maybe in the second round, I can share a couple of thoughts on this.
Sure, sir. Now, that's a very good perspective that you have provided. Let me move over to Mr. Shiv Bhasin, because he has been part of SBI also in technology transformation, as well as now he is leading NSC's transformation, and NSC itself kind of handles millions of transactions every day in and out with right control in place. So, Mr. Bhasin, what's your opinion? What are the challenges? What are the views that you are looking at it from security aspect and the control aspect of payments in the country?
I think I concur with Mr. Hota, as he has been the founder of those instant payments across the country, and that's where we are today actually. And I think a lot of fears are really unfounded. Even when I started my journey of instant payments way back in 2010, when in one of the financial institutions we launched the mobile banking. And since those days, we see that do not share your password or PIN information, or how to preserve or how to manage your business application while designing that the PIN or password information or multi-factor authentication, how they should get deployed so that we can protect the interest of the consumer, and they more often use these payments. And we see that awareness growing. That's where otherwise, that awareness not being grown. Whatever you see today, the Paytm, PhonePe, and various other, GPay, they would not have been here actually had there not been enough awareness. The awareness is not from the brand names of Google and all these things, because ultimately these are just the channels, just the cover pages, internal engines, and all the dispute resolutions or the anything goes wrong lies with the banks, where these accounts of the people are managed, whether they are the remitter accounts or many accounts. Ultimately, people go to the banks if there is any issue. So today also it is just how the experience is provided. Probably the experience has improved by these channels coming up, new age social media channels, if I call it. But however, the security and robustness of the complaints management and robustness of the dispute resolution has improved by the banks. That's where the confidence is rising among the people, and the settlement processes and the IT systems of the banks and the NPCI have been continuously improving. Consequently, we see this confidence growing. So I see that definitely there are always rooms for improvement in terms of our security and how to do much robust biometric based multi-factor authentication, which a lot of mobile devices have started providing. You can do retina scan, you can do the fingerprinting using the local, because there could be many debates still that whether to use a local device-based biometric or whether to use server-side-based biometric authentication. So all those detailed conversations can happen, but there are many innovations are happening. Be it the new digital banks which have which are removing the frictions, customer behavior, while maintaining the security of the transaction, so that the transactions get carried out safely. But at the same time, as during this pandemic era, this is a very popular question that all the cyber security conscious people and the hackers both are at their best alert state, because all our security operation centers are best alert because maximum people are away and people are using more and more electronic channels, and they are not venturing out in spite of a lot of crowds which we see on TV channels and media, that people are venturing out on the roads with with or without mask or anything like that. But in spite of that, the channel volumes, when you talk to the many PSUs during this pandemic time frame, have grown. The uses of people, the footfalls in the branches have got down, and similarly in investment banking area as well, we have seen the volumes have more than doubled. When in NSE, we were processing around 2 billion orders in a day in March, when just pandemic started in India and lockdown started in third week of India, and we are now processing more than 4 billion, and 4 billion first time we hit in early June, and since then still it is growth path. So we are processing per day 4 billion orders. So you can see the electronic channels are definitely improving the volumes, and that is a proof as well. And these volumes are not only just from the various algo trading or any kind of a corporate traders and large trading houses. Definitely they also have taken a growth, but retail trading has also picked up quite a big growth during this time. And various trading houses have got investment banking or investment management applications where mutual funds or other security products, the payments for them are also being made as a more frictionless. Even as a exchange, we are working with the digital side of the transformation, where various business processes, wherever the payments are involved, where it used to be with the corporate houses and large custodians and clearing members or trading members, the payment transactions were involved and they had a payment instrument, how those could be converted into the digital payments totally. So again, contactless digital payments, which means that the people should be able to use any device, anytime to carry out the payment. Not necessarily that, this is a virtual account, you go to the bank and deposit this money, and then whatever receipt comes, scan it, upload it my exchange website, and then I am reconciling from the bank receipt. So we are doing away of all that and leveraging the current age digital payments for all such transactions, where all payments can be collected for various services rendered by the exchange and clearing house, fully digital. And which has a real-time settlement and real-time gratification for the people. So in net, I would say there is a definitely security challenges are there, but I think that people need to be more opening up. There are needs to be caution as a user, but it is not a limiting factor anymore.
Thanks, Mr. Bhasin, and it's quite encouraging that you have given the point of view from the perspective that how the trading and the payment leg is being digitized. Now, let me move to Dr. Suresh, because he comes from a financial conglomerate and which has multiple business lines in the financial sector. What has been your experience on the payment side of it? How technology has enabled not only from the urban side but also from the retail perspective? What has been the challenges, etc.? So, over to you, Mr. Suresh.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for this opportunity with you all today. It's exciting. I can see my peers who are all doing well in banking and financial solutions. It's a great to do that. Well, coming to the topic of classification of payment, especially when it comes to rural India, it's like it seems to have only two classifications. One is more to do with large value payment system. Another one is minimum value payment system. For us, we operate a lot more in minimum value payment system. And for us, retail, especially when you get into the deeper pockets of rural, especially till COVID, it was more to do with cash payment and even paper-based systems where people still use check, demand draft, or you call it payment orders or banker's check till COVID. The COVID has slightly given them just a comfort or a reliance on the kind of systems, and largely now we can see more people getting into the kind of expectations. Even they started bringing it out debit cards, credit cards, and they started even getting into the electronic clearing services or electronic fund transfer. Even they are trying to emphasize to say how to do something real time, gross settlement, or getting into the integrity of using IT, especially even though we have internet, especially connectivity problems, electricity problems, still resource availability problems in the last mile. They are trying to use as much as available and affordable internet banking and mobile banking, which has enabled us to at least substantially get some closer to them. And surely the kind of confidence we call like, especially when it comes to payments, like how we can go closer to them, even though they are the people they were trying to use sometime on the cash payments and paper-based payments. Now they are getting into electronic payments and the kind of remittance and trying to use as much as less cash and trying to use the retail reducing paper-based systems, or even recently we can see like the checks which are we try to use, which is coming very dramatically less in that. So the good sign is what cash payments, paper payments, whichever is now moving towards e-payments, which I can say substantially going out. But still, the challenge is infrastructure is creating a problem. Infrastructure is not so high. The way we do large value or interbank or intercountry internally, we try to do it. But when it comes to rural India, still the challenge is more on the prospect to do it. But the kind of mobility which people are trying to use as much as for the payments now, which is dramatically increased, and trying to use as much as to understand the importance, and people also realize saying like carrying physical, digital cash will help them to go closer to that. So it is improvised surely post-COVID, and we can see enormous change from the customer, the mindset and expectations from the payment system, and we are trying to capitalize. We want to use this as an opportunity to try to build more than what are expected and trying to use or convert them using the available technology and trying to get connected with it. Even the mediators like dealers, brokers, agents, sub-agents were slightly, adamant on not using it because of the month-end kind of volumes got easily distributed, and we are able to get the payment substantially, segregated or separated within the month, and we are able to process it more. So it's a great change, and looking forward for most of the things going extremely rural, getting as much as on the payment side also.
Thanks, Dr. Suresh. That's quite interesting to see that adoption in rural side is also increasing irrespective of the concern. So let me go over to Subhojit Roy. Coming from mutual fund industry, how have you seen the adoption of the digital payments and challenges in mutual fund industry? Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Asim. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. So there are two aspects to your question. One is the what change we are seeing with respect to digital footprint in mutual fund industry in terms of digital investment, digital payments. And second is the mostly current topic that kind of attacks, frauds, and basically the security risk, which Mr. Hota actually outlined. So coming back to your question, first part is really today, most of the mutual funds and many of the BFSI sectors, really India has matured quite a lot. I think last 10 years, a lot of efforts, investments, and vision has gone into that. Today, mutual fund and other BFSI sector companies had really matured in terms of digital journey with respect to especially on the customer and distributor front. So SBI mutual fund is, I think, not an exception. I think maybe one of the in the leaders quadrant with respect to the digital journey, with respect to customers and distributors, and which has given a huge fillip after this lockdown and pandemic started. So which triggered a lot of more transaction. I think if you talk about some numbers, in last 1 year, I think we have seen 150% growth in direct investment to digital channel, and more than 100% investment in digital channel. In the next first 2 months of March, April, I think we have seen 60% increase in the business, actual business in the mutual fund, SBI mutual fund through digital channel. So there's no doubt that digital channel as a main channel of business in growth of the company in mutual fund industry, that has taken a huge boost during this in the last few years, and with this pandemic and lockdown resultant, it has really taken off. So I think it will going forward. I think it will continue to be that with the change in the demographic profile and other aspects and technology improvements. So there is no doubt. But at the same time, as Mr. Hota said, this entire security threat, which is again a big concern, risk for everybody, from the consumer perspective, for the regulator, for government, for all the organizations concerned. And that cat and mouse game, as he said, it will continue. And always we are maybe on the laggard in that case. But on positive side, I think most of us are, I think, gearing up fast. We may not be at that level, but I have seen in most of the companies today, focus on information security, cyber security, and the entire risk management has obviously gone up very much from the board level, which were not there maybe 3-4 years back. Again, it was very confined to the information security IT team. So entire awareness among the public has gone up. Awareness among the board and company level has gone up. So information security today is really, I have seen in our company, is a key discussion points in most of our board and technology committee. But there are two concerns. One is that the user level concern is there, because there are huge threat at various levels, starting from mobile phone, social engineering, phishing attacks, kind of thing, as well as there's a huge threat at the corporate level, organizations level, who are the payment service provider, payment operators, and the banks and intermediaries. So there are a lot of vulnerabilities exist, risk exists, but I think as a ecosystem, as a community, everybody is working together, starting from government, regulators, and organizations. So again, it has to be two-pronged, I think, strategy. One, we have to, I think maybe three-pronged. One is that awareness among customers and consumers, so that as Mr. Hota said, that we are now 150 million, our target is to go 700 million. So one is the awareness of the digital journey, digital transactions benefit, that has to be go into the masses. And also these concerns of risk or the fraudulent threat, that has to be also, because a lot of people, as I said, sitting on the front, not venturing out, that some are not genuine. So you have to bring those people into your fold. But at the same time, you have to tackle this problem, which are real in terms of security threats, which is not unreal now. Today, every company, I think in India, I think 70% companies in last one have been breached once or twice. It is real today. So every company has been breached. So attack is real. Every company is being attacked, tried to attack, and 60 to 70% companies have been really breached in last 1 year or so. So every company, every organization has to really gear up. And so I think a lot of changes are required. One, I think I would suggest a lot of changes or implementation or policies need to come up. I think that we are lacking in public policies, because one is the data protection bill or act, and kind of a Singapore, if you take an example, is I think leading the pack. So a lot of public policies need to come out which talk about the IT technological aspects as well as the consumer or awareness aspects. So those public policies need to take into place, where obviously it may result into penalties being put into either the fraud or the companies. So those policies we are lacking. So on the technology side, how the entire framework of security policy has to be in place. Entire framework of public policy has to be placed in terms of risk mitigation, in terms of incident handling, in terms of fraud and all these things. So these are various challenges. So both will coexist. We will see the growth, but at the same time we will see the kind of threat and increase in threat vector or landscape. So both this fight will go on, as Mr. Hota said. But again, all said and done, India, I think, has done tremendously well with respect to payments, digital payment. In spite of the huge population is unbanked, I think almost world's 48% population is in India unbanked, as per the study. In spite of that huge illiteracy, unorganized sector, unbanked population. So as a product innovation, digital payments or digital platform, India is a leader's quadrant, no doubt, especially with NPCI is a front runner globally. But at that same time, we have to tackle this risk part, fraud and attack part. Also, we have to tackle the awareness and education part and the financial inclusion part. So there's a combination. Now is a game. So it's a long-drawn game, I can say.
Thanks, Mr. Roy, because that gives a perspective that is still with certain impediments, we are still working and growing on the digital payment side of it. So now let me go over to Mr. Shafique Dawood, because he has been on the other side providing solutions to manage all these kind of risks, etc. And his viewpoint will be quite interesting to hear. Over to you, Mr. Shafique.
Hi, distinguished guests. Very good afternoon to all of you. I've heard quite a lot of differing points of view, and it's really exciting conversations that are going on. Maybe I will try to attempt to encapsulate a little bit of what has already been mentioned and look at it in a different dimension. I think Mr. Hota and also ShivKumar had mentioned a bit on fears, some of which I agree are unfounded. But on the other hand, I'm more inclined to go towards and propensate towards Subhojit as per what he said, which is more towards, there is a balancing act that we need to do, right? On the one hand, we want to enable financial inclusion. India is not the only country in which has issues pertaining to the level of unbankability. A huge percentage, even the Philippines, I think it's about 60+%, and even Indonesia is facing the same problems. We can take some of these things that have worked out. Even in Indonesia, for example, micro loans are happening and doing really well. And it's an issue of collaboration. But before we can even start going on a systems point of view, we need to take a look at regulation. Legislation, and that in itself is a horrific balancing act. The balancing act between the privacy, given the fact that we have things like GDPR laws, it's not a black and white. So in recent times, Subhojit also mentioned in Singapore being one of those who's taking a lead in terms of thought leadership. Our minister here, Minister Iswaran, actually tabled new laws pertaining to different legislation, because legislation and regulation, it's not a panacea, it's not foolproof, right? You've got data privacy concerns, and so it is about adapting to change, adapting to the behaviors of individuals, right? We spoke about a little bit about authentication methods, biometrics and stuff, and I think I have a section in which I will be talking on tokenization, biometrics, OTPs and stuff like that. As we move along, even those in the rural areas are using smartwatches. They will be using e-wallets. They will be using electronic payments, right? But also, on the one hand, they will also be susceptible to social engineering, right? So that element of awareness is really important and key before we embark into this, because I have seen a lot of different old individuals who have lost their entire life savings due to these scams. And during this COVID period, the number of scams have increased multifold, as you probably know. And this is something of a huge concern of us. Then we go into the technological, in order to mitigate fraud, we need to look at it in an ecosystem point of view. Everything ties in, again, not just on just a payments perspective, which I do agree India is taking and making a very important benchmark role, in the leaders quadrant. On the flip side, there are a lot of other issues, other dimensions that need to be taken into account. For example, the likes of advanced persistent threats. In the past, we used to think of it as just purely nation state or financially motivated. I could name you a nation state who's financially motivated. The threats that emanate from these particular groups are real. I'll just give you a sensing. A couple of months ago, the total amount of credit cards in India that have been compromised was in the region of about 544,000, all under one singular card dump. That is a gravitating amount. It's a magnanimous amount. It's huge. And it's not just about the amount, it's about the systemic element of how they got compromised. That is key. I have the entire demarcations, the entire delineations of all the different cards attributed to different banks. So digital hygiene awareness is very key. Authentication is one part. We need to work hand in hand with regulators making such legislation. We need to create that awareness on a national level. And also, we need systems in place, not only thinking about the payment elements, but also because the evolution of these threat actors are very advanced today. Not only attacking, things like Android phones, iPhones, but also down on a bank's perspective, with APT threats, with malware, and it's getting more and more advanced in terms of how they socially engineer their modus operandi and the threat vectors. So we need to look at it inclusively whilst trying to pursue a national agenda. We need to have and ride on legislation in order to enable change. Technology is just only one part of the equation. We can talk tech the whole entire day, but without these factors, which I see should come in the initial enabling, government assistance, governments and ministries leading the pack, leading the charge, we will have a better roadmap ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Shafique. And it's quite interesting to hear from a technologist saying that first, the policies, processes, and awareness, etc., are more important. Technology can enable as far as it can go. So thank you for those inputs. So now let's just take the panel to other issues. Now, there has been a discussion going around that 5G is going to transform the lives of most of the people, and not only other aspect of life, but also the financial services sector. It will encourage financial inclusion, payments, etc. And it's one area where a lot of deliberations are happening. Some countries have taken steps ahead and they are already ahead in the game. So I would like to invite Mr. Shanmugam to talk about what could be the impact of 5G on the payment industry. What does he see that is going to drastically change in the near future? Over to you, Dr. Shanmugam.
Yeah, it's a great question where the technology research, what are we tried, and especially when it talks about even urban today, forget about rural in urban, we are not finding it so essentially the 5G things coming out. But now the kind of infrastructure which is enabling us not only from the financial into the retail markets, especially the research says that earn to pay model is getting empowered more on the technology, which connectivity is must, and how this online, especially to keep the business simple and trying to get engaged and trying to get other things fine. So the 5G technology expectations are a lot in terms of retail, especially in urban and even semi-urban, which we try to connect it and try to use as much as towards the kind of business which our retail is more dependent upon. Especially if you see from the health, medical, education, even the information which is expected a lot kind of post-COVID. Now the expectations is huge in part of 5G, which not only just to do something to do with a finance or a business or something to do go ahead. So the expectations 5G is already set, and a lot more is expected even from urban and semi-urbans, and expected a lot more in independence in terms of connectivity, which already initiatives we can see positively from the government and the ISPs, whomsoever is trying to take it up. At least we can see the uploads and bulk things, whichever is trying through mobility and IoT, we are trying to get as much as on the 5G. Especially when it comes to retail, that's the chunk, that's what the expectations which is set, because the kind of post-COVID, which is going to come or emerge, is a lot more dependent more on the 5G. So 5G has the information, and 5G has to take us to the multiple corners between urban, semi-urban and rural, and getting as much as earn-to-pay model. Why I'm again emphasizing earn-to-pay model, the kind of community cloud, which we are expecting part of it now. It's going to create share and care, or a customer is looking, even a bank, financial services, cooperative banks, and trying to bring all those things in one bouquet, or trying to avail those services. The 5G is going to be the backbone and trying to utilize, which is limelight so far from urban, semi-urban and rural India. So the community cloud will be very stronger and try to create as much as part of the products, services, payments, even reach and speed is going to be more from 5G, especially the kind of corporate digital is moving towards the customer digital now. Everywhere, every individual customer is going to be treated as corporate, and the services, social and even regulations, everything is going to mitigate and try to use as much as on the available and online, offline services. So 5G is going to create as much as on the community cloud and try to use the transformation. That's what the expectation set. It's actually possible, not possible is not a big risk as of now. It's a need, now it's a must. So 5G has to get implemented, try to use as much as like urban, semi-urban towards rural, will have huge more volumes getting added, the kind of expectation set part of this post-COVID.
Thanks, Dr. Suresh. Yeah, thanks, Dr. Suresh. You brought up very important point. Earn-to-pay model, community cloud, and each individual can be treated as a corporate. These are really interesting concept, and definitely it will kind of be explored furthermore. Now, moving ahead to the security aspect of it. Now, let me go back to the expert, Mr. Shafique. Now, we have been talking about tokenization, biometrics, OTP, 2FA, server security, etc. So how can the payment transactions be made more secure? Now, it's a very cliche kind of a statement, but I would like to share your experience so that the audience can take some insights from that perspective. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. So, while some cognizant of the question is tokenization, biometrics, OTP, different types of authentication, I think we are all in this panel have been long enough around to see its evolution, right? Whilst we started off with passwords, that's not good enough. So ended up we use OTP, because everyone's holding their own phone. And then that's not good enough because of the weaknesses, not only because of online thefts now, hijacking, interception, spoofing, verification, you losing your phone accounts, man-in-the-middle attacks, due to phishing, which is, again, ever more advanced these days. There is no trust towards SMS OTPs, right? There's too many vulnerabilities. So next stop, people like NIST and all start to move towards a better way of doing things, as it evolves, right? It is now we are looking into other ways. On a card present is different from card not present perspective. So let me start off with Emv tokenization, right? Emv tokenization is basically a process. It is about digitizing a physical payment card into being able to be used in multiple independent digital payment channels, using tokens, right? So that's one of the good ways. I think MasterCard also started with that. So it's all about code generation. There is a strong level of device binding, which affords persistence. And, there are cryptograms for credit cards and credit card tokenizations linked to even your primary account numbers. Now, this is one of the ways to look at it. But as you can see, there are still a lot of compromised cards out there in card dumps. We see a lot of dumps. We see a lot of data leakages throughout the world, including places like even South Korea, which was a shocker because that wasn't quite often. that we see that. Now, because of evolution, when you suddenly see Apple watches, you see your phones being able to act as a credit card, as a wallet, it allows for a more omni-channel capability for the client to choose what they want to use and afford them that freedom to pay using multiple channels, right? Wearable technologies, and stuff. So people like Apple are pretty good in devising new ways of doing that. I'm not so sure if you're familiar with Touch ID, but this is moving to the arena of biometrics here, where your fingerprint is being used, right? These are, again, some of the various ways of moving towards a more secure channel. But that's not good enough now, is it? We need to think about beyond 2FA, right? So two-factor authentication is only one element. You've got things like FIDO leading the charge with U2F, with cryptographic keys. It's kind of like PKI, which we are all used to, public key infrastructure, authentication based on username, PIN, and now you even have hard-coded tokens, meaning it is a device by which you could use things like a USB-A, USB-C, in order at the point of transaction that acts as your digital token, right? So that's one of the elements. Now, is that enough then? Is that going to be the benchmark right now? The answer is still no. In Group IB, because we do a lot of investigations, incident response to multiple different organizations and banks, tier 1 banks, we believe that a framework is required. In fact, it was just 2 days ago we had an event called CrimeCon 2020, and in which we launched a product called the Threat Hunting Framework, which was the genesis of 17 years worth of building a product derived out of what we used to call it as Secure Bank. It's being used by quite a number of banks and stuff, but the idea here is that if you use just one of those channels, hackers' evolution towards gaining an understanding and access to these threats are the problem. So we believe in adaptive authentication, more multi-factor, and keep them guessing on how you're going to get it done. But more looking at it in a different perspective, right? You need to understand tokenizations, biometrics, OTPs are only the one part about the authentication. I believe in a means of understanding behavior. Once you understand behavior, it doesn't really matter if the guy switches a phone, switches his device. You understand his behavior on multiple different layers. You understand it because it's not just about the device that he's holding. It's not about his behaviors on how he types on the keyboard, how he moves his mouse, or how he uses the phone, or other elements of device fingerprinting, about where he stays and stuff. It's about mitigating the sessional versus the transactional. You see, once you understand the sessional, then you can mitigate other areas such as the transactional elements. And then we go into an understanding of how threat actors behave on a more transnational perspective. Because most of these threats are coming from transnational crime, as far as what we see, a lot of cross-border elements. So there are a few elements. I want to wrap this up. Before we just talk about the authentication element, there are a few things. One is about onboarding new parties, into your system, right? How do you do that well? How do you do the onboarding and KYC well? Because if you get it wrong from that start, you're going to have a systemic problem later on. Second, mitigation of costs. You buy systems that are expensive, but the regulator is going to slap on huge penalties for data breaches. Where's the mitigating standpoint here? Who's going to help you out in your business, especially SMEs? When you are taking on a huge risk, this is a barrier to entry. This is the part where businesses do not want to take such a huge risk because of the essences of data privacy, the worry about data leaks, which are happening all the time. I mean, we saw Cognizant got hit. We saw some of the bigger players like LG, NTT got hit, right? If these guys can get hit, anybody can get hit, right? Because of the continued evolution of malware, of threat actors. So we have to look at it on an onboarding perspective. Once they're onboarded, how we think about customer friction elements. How do we reduce the friction once we already know that? We don't want them to continue to jump hoops every single time they come in, right? So you've got to look at it in a layered perspective. In a sessional perspective, understanding the behavioral biometrics of the individual, so that even if the guy changes phone, you have an understanding, a signature of that individual and how that person behaves, the persona of the individual, not just looking at it on a transactional. The transactional offers a huge other set of challenges in itself, based on the data that you hold, right? And then there are other layers, things like Visa 3DS 2.0, which are also continuously attempting to improve. To me, I think my final statement is, in order for you to have a solid system, you got to consider every step and every milestone of the transaction. You got to understand at the point of onboarding, who are you onboarding? Have you done enough KYC on it, right? There are lots of systems that allow you to do that. Second is to baseline individuals who are using your system in terms of contextual behavioral factors. And there are many ways to do that, right? And you need a solid individual, a solid system in order to have high accuracies. If not, you're going to face huge false positives, which is going to give you another problem, right? Or huge decline rates. And then we talk about continued analytics due to volume, in baselining your regular users and giving them a more green lane, faster way to conduct their business whilst managing risks and putting barriers. And that's where I believe the multi-factor authentication will come into play.
Thank you, Mr. Shafique. Quite engrossing on that part of it. And as you rightly said, moving from sessional versus transactional is one key takeaway which people should take from here. And also the behavioral aspect of it, which we need to kind of work upon. Now, let me just move over to what are the expectations from by industries like mutual fund, brokerage, insurance, etc., from payment service providers. And let me go over to Mr. Bhasin to provide his insights that what does he expect from the payment service providers. Over to you, Mr. Bhasin. Sir, I think you are on mute. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, there was maybe a little bit of a network fluctuation, so I couldn't hear you. Can you please repeat the question?
I'm saying, what is the expectations by the banking industry, mutual funds, insurance, brokerage, etc., from payment service providers? What are the expectations with the technology advancements, etc., happening?
Yeah, see, with the technology advancements like 5G coming into the play, definitely there is going to be much improvement in the cycle of assisted sales, because a lot of times the advisory services in the investment management area are the ones which can change the way somebody wants to make the decision. That helps a lot to people make the decision. So I think advisory services will become very strong in terms of people have tried in recent past video tellers in the banks, and as well as video advisors for investment management up. I think we are going to have a much improved the practice in terms of advisory practices for how to plan your management, how to plan your investments, as well as when in any kind of transaction somebody is carrying out, as you see the service anywhere, how can they help you? So I think the 5G and all this coming up will definitely help if, especially the investment management mobile apps and various any channel front ends which are there, the improvement will grow, because wherever they will find that the investor is exploring and trying to invest some time on a particular product evaluation, then the margin functionality could be introduced in a much better manner with a great experience to convert that the exploration into the transaction to area definitely. But as well as in terms of the payments, when we were talking about like unbanked population, so the kiosk banking and small branches can work purely on 5G. And I see that 5G coming forward, converting a lot of unbankable population to bankable population, and huge growth, fueling the growth of financial products penetration, as well as fueling the growth in the coming up with the various channel services, having an excellent experience improvement for the.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Bhasin. So now let me just quickly move to the next question, and this is to Mr. Hota. What are the technology trends or innovation that you see on the horizon which can transform the payment industry? You have been the pioneer on this industry, and and you're also kind of consultant to SWIFT, and you know the pulse of the industry. So would definitely like to hear your viewpoint here. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. In fact, let me really confine myself to the payments area. I suppose a lot of innovations taking place in all areas of payments, be it security, be it acceptance point, be it instruments, be it the behavioral aspect of the people, how they can really do it better, everything. But possibly, since the time is limited, let me really flag one point. The innovations are taking place in every area. And I see a great future. And the volume is not a challenge for a population like ours. A billion a day is a feasibility. But there are a few things, enabling things that regulators and everybody, the big payment operators like NPCI and others need to do. The RBI had flagged that issue of granular, means a transparency and disclosure of data. I'm not talking about individual data, aggregated data, so that the industry can take clues. Like we talk about number of the active users. We are just really speaking about 150 to 200. Can a very granular data come, like in UPI? Active users, at least one transactions during last 3 months. Can NPCI, Visa, and MasterCard say these are the number of customers who have done at least one transaction, e-com transactions? Number of customers. Nobody is publishing that. Should be mandated. After all, NPCI has been set up with a national purpose, with as a public payments, as a public good. Can we really publish a regional geographical data about that? Can the system really publish? Now we have gone for contactless payment cards. How much of payment cards have gone contactless? Payments have been, what percentage of transactions in terms of numbers, where the PIN is not required to be put. The card is contactless. Transaction is having a contactless card. But whether it is really a contactless transactions, we do not know. No published data. Can such really at a aggregated level data really come out? This would help the innovators to see where the potential market is there. UP is such a large country. How much of digital transactions taking place? Can something be done? Can a regional focus payments, a digital payments approach go on? The contactless, can focus be done? So can really, means the untapped area. After all, any startup comes, he would like to analyze what is the business opportunity. To the business opportunity, they really engage a lot of consultants to really do, please study and give me some ideas, this, that. And everybody really do some, just calculations, just estimates. But granular data would help everybody. The innovators would get a great value if such data get published. So transparency and disclosure framework in the payment system that needs to come very urgently. RBI has done a great job, security framework, very nice guidelines, monitoring the progress. The grievance redressal, very good steps during the last 4 or 5 years, series of circulars have come. But on disclosure and transparency framework, such guidelines have not come so far. This is a absolute must for innovations to go to meet the right purpose, or else these many startups will come, they will really come up and they will just disappear. We would like such the startup company to have very data which is reliable and on which they can work on. And NPCI's data is extremely reliable. Means such a volume of data, 4 or 5 billion transactions a month. It is a storehouse of information. We talk of analytics, we talk of machine learning, we talk of all theoretical stuff. I suppose stop theory. You have the data with us. You do this job, research on the job, do some work. I suppose let us not stop theorizing and academic discussion. Let us start doing things, which is concrete data is there. And it is a public good, and it is owned by the public sector banks. The government is supporting so much. RBI is supporting so much. Use this mine, gold mine. This gold mine of NPCI should be leveraged by the country. That is what I would like to say.
Sir, that's very interesting. And let me put a follow-up question. So why this is not happening? Because you are 100% right. I would say 200% right on that part of it. So what are the constraints?
I suppose more bandwidth is required. More bandwidth is required. More people have been required. More public focus. I suppose let us not run too much after really. We have already, the growth is already happening. It is on an autopilot mode. Let us see really how it can be sustained and taken to a very qualitative dimension to that. I suppose a little bit of a discussion with government, Reserve Bank,
sure, sir.
A little broader thinking has to go into that. It is a gold mine, you leverage that. Be it really, maybe there are 4 or 5 new NUE may come, or 1 or 2 might come. You think that NPCI will be threatened? No. NPCI would grow much and more and more. More NUE comes, the NPCI would grow stronger. But NPCI to grow stronger, these are things which are absolutely necessary. It should be used as a public good, NPCIs. The data, and it could give the, guiding thoughts to the rest of the industry in the retail payment sector.
Sure, sir. Thanks. That's quite interesting and suggestion. Just the last 2 minutes, so I will go over to Mr. Subhojit Rai. Last comment: what are any help that you believe the regulator should provide for the enhancement and of payment service providers or payment industry in the country?
No, as Mr. Hota said, we are not, as India, as a country, from the payments, digital payments, I think we are one of the leaders. So there's no dearth in terms of product and also innovation. As Mr. Hota said, we can innovate more targeted innovation, what is meaning. Because today we are growing just aimlessly maybe, is saying how to analyze the data and make the innovation more targeted, more beneficial. Otherwise, what's he's saying, so many startups are coming, they may be disappearing, right? So that is a waste of energy and time. So obviously, I want that Mr. Hota said, we should write to, a lot of times nowadays we talk about too much of jargon and theory in terms of AI.
I agree.
So
sure.
That should be really used today, right? It should not be just in theory. So it should be targeted innovation, that is one. And second, I have touched upon this entire public policy.
Policy is part of it. So that's a good suggestion. And which
taking cue from Singapore or some country, we should have a good public policy in terms of financial inclusion, awareness, entire security framework, best practices. Otherwise, this kind of trade-off will go on. As I said, there will be tussle going on. This concern will be there always, but always we should have a framework so everybody can follow, and that is should be managed. And share should be whatever penalties imposed, otherwise not to follow. So these are my two thought process. Otherwise, in the product side, I think we are not lagging far behind. So innovation product, India is one of the leading now product in terms of digital payments. And IMPS and UPI is the leading, is it live examples?
Sure, sir. Thanks. Over to you, Dr. Shanmugam. Any last point, last inputs on what help you require?
It's again, we are in a digital journey. That's what I started saying. It's like moving from corporate digital towards the customer digital. So far, even RBI is steering and RTGS, NEFT, SEBI, all those things are more of a corporate digital. We have regulated model. It's like we are sitting from one side and safely doing the other things. But what currently is moved from corporate towards customer digital, where every individual customer is going to dictate and trying to take it out. So here, NPCI has to see not like NFT or it's more to do with the transaction like earlier what we did in RTGS. It's not going to be here. It's going to be diversified. We should even get into the challenge of making the digital payments more inclusive. That's a challenge. Generally, NPCI should look more into that. And second, like with a digital payment being more good like currency notes.
So let me just thanks sincerely to all the panelists for sharing their practical and quite interesting views. Thank you all and have a nice day. Over to you, Ankita.
Thank you so much, sir. Well, I would like to give a name to this session. I think, I don't know if I would do justice to it, but do you agree that this session was a chest full of treasure? Treasures, I can say, because the information shared, trust me, I mean, you all are the experts. I mean, I'm here, a newbie sitting here. I mean, finding everything that you all are speaking, so informative. I mean, I myself am writing down some pointers, maybe, something that may help. With that said, thank you so much, gentlemen, for giving us your valuable time, right? I mean, that's something really, really that we value. And with that said, ladies and gentlemen, I would really want you all to give them a huge round of applause together. Come on, I want you all as well to please give yourself a round of applause. Especially Mr. Asim, Parashar, you've been like actually trying to dig into each and every statement and trying to get the best out of each and every speaker.